Banaza is a traveling merchant in a world where magic and demi-humans exist, but remarkably, he is not racist. He believes in actually paying demi-humans for their work, which I guess most people find annoying when they should really be minding their own business. It would be great if people didn't discriminate against demi-humans and would just live in peace with them, but that would mean giving up all that free labor, so Banaza is the only one who supports them. By complete chance, Banaza seems to have been summoned to another world to become their hero, but as he appears in the summoning circle, he is totally confused by what's going on around him. He is informed that he was summoned by the kingdom of Exiled to help them in the battle against the Dark Army since he is a hero candidate, but Banaza corrects them by saying he is not worthy of the title of hero. He thinks there may have been some kind of mistake, but the people around him ignore everything he says and call for a magic orb to be brought up onto the circle by one of the maids. They tell Banaza that the orb will analyze his abilities, and when a hero candidate is summoned, in exchange for having their level reset to 1, the hero candidate is usually given a divine revelation. This is an ability that gives 1 strength that wouldn't be attainable through normal training, however, Banaza just doesn't have 1. And on top of that, his stats are slightly below average for this world, so the summoners start thinking they may have failed again somehow. Banaza can't say he's surprised by the results since he already knew he wasn't particularly special, but they didn't have to rub it in like that. Since he clearly doesn't meet their expectations, he starts asking to be sent back to his original world, but he gets cut off by the fanfare going on in the summoning circle next to him. The people who summon the other guy praise him for having exceptional stats indicative of a true hero, so everyone ditches Banaza and flocks to the side of the new hero to praise him as well. The other guy takes a look at the stats on Banaza's screen, and once he gets a frame of reference for how good his stats truly are, and he immediately lets it go to his head that he is the chosen one. A party is thrown where the king officially appoints the blonde guy as the hero of the kingdom, and while the celebration is going on, Banaza is left on his own. He has never heard of any kingdom called Exiled before, so he wonders if he is really in another world after all. Regardless, his priority right now should be getting himself back to his original world, but that's going to be difficult since when he finally gets to meet with the king, he is told that the gate connecting to his world has been closed, so there's no way they can send him back now. But not to worry, because they plan to compensate him by kicking him over to a plot of land that they don't use so they never have to see him again. Also, the kingdom messed up by summoning him here and not being able to send him back, so they tell him that he is not allowed to tell anyone about what happened here. With that, Banaza was loaded up into a cart in a rough manner and sent on his way to his new residence in the middle of nowhere. Along the way, Banaza tries to start a conversation with the lizard man who was driving the cart, but the lizard man had been told that he wasn't allowed to speak to Banaza at all, so he declines answering any questions. Banaza tries to get him to open up by asking if he has a slave contract with the king, but the lizard man finds the notion preposterous because slavery was abolished here years ago. He may not get paid the best salary, but he's not a slave to anyone. Humans and demi-humans live in peace here, so there's very little discrimination between them. 20 days into the journey, Banaza has arrived at the LVL forest. Once he gets out of the cart, the lizard man hands him a bottomless bag that the king provided him with. It should have enough food and money for him to last a while out here, but before he leaves, the lizard man turns back to him and warns that the demon lord's army is known to be active around this area, so in his personal opinion, Banaza should get out of here as soon as possible if he wants to live. As the lizard man leaves, Banaza is grateful for the warning. Even if he told him to run away, where exactly could he go when he doesn't know anything about this world? He takes a look at the bottomless bag he had received, and thankfully, it works the same way as the ones back in his old world, so he's able to use it. He looks through the items available and pulls out a sword so he can defend himself if he needs to, but although the sword looks impressive, it's still just a piece of junk. Banaza then notices a few slimes approaching, but since in his world, slimes were passive mobs, he didn't think these ones would be any different. He was wrong. The slimes attack him and he is forced to slash through all 3 of them to save himself. However, the cheap sword is already broken from just 3 strikes. Banaza is now unarmed. He gets a notification telling him that his level has increased from 1 to 2, and when he checks his stats, they all change to this weird sideways 8 symbol. But it's not like he could have gotten infinite stats from just killing 3 slimes. He is also shown that he can now access the voice guidance system, so he initializes it and is shown all the spells that he now has access to. But it's a little too much information for him all at once. The system also warns him that the bottomless bag he was given has a monster-attracting spell on it, which is probably why slimes decided to attack him against their normal behavior. That, coupled with the fact that he was only given the cheap sword to defend himself, means the king is trying to get him to die out here. The system tells Banaza that he is able to remove the spells on the bag if he wants, so he does so, and the bag is once again safe to carry around. Now that one problem is solved, he still needs to find a safe place so he can protect himself, but as he was about to enter the forest, the system warned him that the forest is contaminated with dense malicium. It's a substance that is produced and dispersed by demons, and it is said to be very harmful to humans if they come into contact with it, so it would be a bad idea to go in there as it is now. The system asks him if he wants to purify the whole forest, and it's actually possible for him to do it, but it will cost him 1/3 of his available magic. Since he is being forced to live here by the kingdom, Banaza thinks he might as well make this place as livable as possible, especially since he has no other use for his magic anyway, so he accepts the terms and a blinding white light is emitted as the whole forest is purified. Banaza doesn't realize the scale of the purification he just did or what that blinding light was, but he then gets a notification telling him that his level has risen, followed by many more of the same notifications. Meanwhile, over in the castle, the princess is pleading with the king to reconsider his decision regarding Banaza since it is their fault that he couldn't return to his world in the first place. So it's not right to send him to that forest knowing it is an almost guaranteed death sentence. The king doesn't see anything wrong with his actions since he views Banaza as an unworthy piece of trash that was too weak to become their hero, but the discussion is soon interrupted by a messenger who has come to inform the king that the highest level holy magic of purification has just been used within the kingdom. The king immediately believes it to be the work of the blonde hero since he had set out towards the south to take on the demon lord, but the messenger reports that it couldn't have been him since the purification magic didn't come from the south, but rather the northern Delaviza forest. Back to Banaza, the level up notifications have finally stopped and he is now level 367, but he doesn't know how he got to this point when to the best of his knowledge he hasn't killed any monsters yet. He assumes he might just gain experience from the act of using magic, so he turns off his level up notifications because it would be annoying to have to listen to that many notifications over and over. He also checks on his magic levels and all the magic he had expended for the purification has already replenished, giving him the false impression that his magic levels are really low since they regenerated so quickly. Moving on, he still has to figure out something for his living situation, but he was banned from living in any town so he doesn't know what to do. The system suggests that he uses some shape-shifting magic to disguise himself so no one can recognize him. Banaza thinks that's a great idea, so the system asks what gender he would like to disguise himself as, so Banaza let his intrusive thoughts take over for a bit and chooses to become a girl, and he's kinda hot. However, after fawning over his body, he starts taking things seriously and transforms into something he can be comfortable with. With his new body, he can now hide in plain sight since no one will recognize him as Banaza, so the system suggests that he use teleportation magic to return to the royal capital. He activates the teleportation magic and is moved to the capital, but since it worked well enough to get him here, he attempts to use it to send him back to his original world, but he has no such luck this time. Since he's going to be stuck here for a while, he's going to need to find a way to make money. And since this world seems fairly similar to his former world, he wonders if there's a guild he can register at. He later arrives at the Adventurers Guild and he registers under the name Fleo to keep his real identity secret. After registering, he goes over to the Nobis board to check out what quests are available since he needs to make some money, but he doubts that he'll be able to get anything good since he is just a new adventurer. Just then, he notices a girl who is looking for an escort to take her to the Delaviza forest, but with the rumors that the Demon Lord's army is stationed there, no sane adventurer is willing to go there for any amount of money. They tell the girl to just wait until an attack unit is sent up there to clear out the forest so it will be safe again, but the girl remains determined to go there now because her family is in danger, so the adventurers stop interacting with her and push past. Fleo approaches the girl and tells her that he is willing to take her there, and it shouldn't take long at all since he can just teleport straight there. Upon hearing Fleo say he can use teleportation magic, everyone in the guild begins talking about him since teleportation magic is something that only the very best sorcerers can use. Fleo hadn't realized it was such a big deal, but it has already brought him so much attention that he is confronted by a royal knight, Bellarosa, and she doesn't believe he can actually use teleportation, so she thinks Fleo is attempting to kidnap the poor defenseless girl, and she and her team are prepared to cut him down immediately. Fleo really doesn't like where things are going, so he tries to defuse the situation by telling the girls that he isn't a suspicious person. Sure, he may be able to use abnormally high-level magic, and his identity of Fleo hasn't existed until about 10 minutes ago, but he's done nothing wrong. If they really don't trust his intentions, then he offers to have the Knight's party come along so they can ensure that the girl won't be harmed in any way. His offer catches them off guard, but they accept and head out into a back alley so they don't draw too much attention. Fleo activates his teleportation spell, and everyone is transported to the Delevisive forest instantly. They are all surprised that Fleo can actually use such powerful magic, so they are convinced that he must be a first-order sorcerer of some kind and are also starting to regret the threats they had made to him earlier. Bellerosa gets down to apologize to Fleo for making rude assumptions about him which were completely baseless, and so do the rest of her teammates. Meanwhile, the girl is confused by the state of the forest since she was sure that it was coated in a thick veil of malicium. But now it's all gone and she can't even sense any magic beasts in the area either. Fleo was about to explain that he used purification magic in the forest, but the system warns him that it could be dangerous to reveal that he can use purification magic when he is speaking to a demon. At the same time, the same girls that were ready to cut Fleo open in defense of the girl have all turned their weapons towards her, stating she is suspicious for wanting to come to this dangerous place. The girl acts scared at first, but once it is clear that the party isn't buying her disguise anymore, she begins to reveal her true form. She was Fenris, the younger sister to the demon General Fengril, and she was initially sent to the human town to learn about them and find someone dumb enough to come back here with her so she could eat them. But now that they know her true identity, she needs them all to die. Fenris begins spreading her malicium, and it is enough to bring everyone to their knees. All except Fleo, who is just tanking the damage. Fenris is surprised that he isn't affected by the malicium, but it doesn't matter to her much since she can just finish him off directly instead. She attacks Fleo, but he manages to dodge out of the way at the last second while carrying Bellerosa. He can't protect everyone and fight at the same time, so he uses teleportation magic to send everyone away and faces Fenris alone. He still doesn't know why he had to end up here, but there's no way he is going to let himself die before he gets the chance to do anything in this world, so he's going to throw every spell the system has available at Fenris. As Fenris attacks him, Fleo activates a skill that allows him to leap really high into the air, and he surprises even himself with how much force he was able to generate just now. Fenris attempts to attack him again, so he selects another spell and creates a rock wall for defense. He continues to just spam spells at her until he casts a gravitation spell that pins Fenris to the ground. He knows he's got to do something to take advantage of the opportunity he's got right now, but he doesn't know how to permanently deal with a demon like her. So the system offers a helpless suggestion and asks if he has considered a little something called slavery. Fleo is an advocate for free will and all, so enslavement is the last thing he would ever want to force on someone else, thus he refuses to use the subjugation spell. Fenris attempts to use her magic to get herself out of the gravity spell, but the system negates it and once again suggests that Fleo gives slavery a try. This goes on for a while with the system really trying to convince him that making Fenris a slave is a good idea, but he has his principles and won't compromise on them. While Fleo was arguing with the system, Fenris had gone through every spell she knows and they were all negated, so she has run out of magic and surrenders herself to Fleo. Without the strength to fight back, she's as good as dead already, so she asks him to end her life quickly. Fleo smiles and tells her that he never wanted to kill her in the first place, nor did he want to fight to begin with, so he undoes the gravity magic and lets Fenris go. She can't believe a human would willingly let a demon live, but Fleo doesn't really care whether he is dealing with a demon or a human. He just doesn't think it's right to kill an opponent who already surrendered. Fenris understands his point of view, but she still thinks he is being very naive. She undoes her beast transformation and returns to her normal human form, but she's naked, so Fleo finds it hard to look at her. He takes off his coat and covers her body before giving her the proposition that if she is willing to not kill humans anymore, then Fleo will look the other way and let her go free. Just not naked. He turns around to see if he has some clothes in his bottomless bag for her to wear, but he then hears a loud thud and finds that Fenris has collapsed. However, the system informs him that it is simply due to her magic being depleted, so there's no reason for him to worry. He sets up camp for the night and spends some time looking through the menu so he can keep track of all the magic he has available to use. But after taking a look at this list, he has no idea why he has access to all this strong magic when he just got here. At the same time, Fenris finally regains consciousness, so she takes a peek outside and sees Fleo sitting in front of the tent. She thinks back to how Fleo completely dominated her without even trying, and she has a strong resistance to magic as well, so he simply overwhelmed her. She always thought humans were a weak race, but now she doesn't know what to think. On another note, it's pretty strange that her magic fully recovered after only a couple of hours when she ran out, so she gets dressed and steps out to ask Fleo if he used healing magic on her. He confirms that he healed her, but if it were any other human, she would have been killed on the spot and skinned to make a Christmas rug, so she gets down on her knees and swears that she will never hurt another human again. And in addition, because she acknowledges Fleo's overwhelming strength, she says she sees him as her master, so she will dedicate her life to serving him. Fleo keeps saying he doesn't want a slave, but this is an isekai, so slavery was always inevitable. Fenris says she'll kill herself right now if she can't become his slave, so Fleo caves and says she can serve him or whatever, but he doesn't want her to die. The two settle down around the campfire as Fleo tells Fenris about the circumstances that brought him here. He tells her that the kingdom summoned him as a hero candidate, but they discovered he had no skills and they couldn't send him back to his original world anymore, so they tossed him out here instead. He then undoes the shape-shifting magic to show Fenris what he really looks like. He changed the way he looks so the people from the castle don't recognize and try to kill him to keep their blunder a secret. But even if he has figured out how to keep himself safe, he has no idea what to do from now on. Plus, he is currently homeless, so he can't provide any stability for her. He tries to convince her to not be so insistent on serving him because it will make her life tougher, but she says her species remain completely devoted to whomever they acknowledge as their master, so no matter what may come or where they go, she will always be by Fleo's side no matter what. Fleo can't really argue with her after her declaration of commitment, so he agrees to let her stay by his side and Fenris jumps on him in excitement. Meanwhile, back at the castle, a blonde guy the king appointed as the hero has just returned from the strike force mission, and it was an absolute failure with most of the squadron being wiped out. The hero immediately puts all the blame on the soldiers and says they all freaked out and nearly got themselves killed as soon as they saw a magical beast, but he graciously fought tooth and nail to save as many of them as he could, so he won't stand here and be called a failure. The king isn't falling for such obvious BS, so he asks one of the soldiers that was in the squadron what actually happened, and the real story is that the hero stayed behind the army the entire time, and as soon as monsters appeared, he hightailed it out of there, leaving the soldiers fighting for their lives. All in all, he was a bitch. As the blonde hero is leaving, he begins complaining to himself that he has not leveled up at all in the past month. Despite his constant training, the level of his skills remain the same as they were when he was first summoned, and even at that, he is barely strong enough to handle a human or a weak magical beast on his own. So he would get his ass handed to him if he even attempted to fight a magical beast of a higher level. Just as his frustrations were hitting a boiling point, he is suddenly approached by the servant that was assigned to him by the castle, Suya. Since he's not in the best mood right now, he decides that he will go out and treat Suya to all the wonders of luxury. All at the expense of the royal family, of course. Meanwhile, Fleo is thinking of the best way to make some money of his own, so he plans to head into the Adventurers Guild to take on some quests, and Fenris is eager to join her master in whatever he wants to do. Fleo has no problem with her following him, but he would appreciate it if she dropped the master title and just used his name. As they are walking through the market, a man calls out to Fenris to get her to buy some veggies, thinking she and Fleo are a married couple. It's an honest misunderstanding, but now that he thinks about it, Fleo believes it may be easier to travel around this world with Fenris if they acted like a married couple, but only if she's okay with being married to him. Fenris is absolutely elated at the idea of marrying Fleo because her species hold no greater honor than being able to say that their husband is stronger than everyone else. Fleo feels the need to clarify that they will just be pretending to be married to one another, but Fenris doesn't care about the little details as long as she gets to call them her darling. After getting to the Adventurers Guild, Fleo has a guild ID issued to Fenris as well, and she's a little embarrassed because having this means she and Fleo will have a matching accessory. And in her culture, there is something similar which is done as part of a mating ritual. The guild receptionist pretends she didn't hear that whole conversation and just asks Fenris what name she would like to register under, so Fenris merely gives her full name and demon army title, but Fleo stops her in time and just puts down Ray's for her name. Later, Ray's apologizes for nearly getting herself exposed, but he says it is fine since nothing bad happened. Just then, a bell is heard ringing as the receptionist announces that there is an urgent quest they need handled. A huge group of psycho bears have been sighted near the city, and they are heading here right now. Those are the same bears that the blonde hero ran away from, so the adventurers are all scared to tackle this one. To incentivize them to accept, the guild is prepared to offer 10 times the usual reward for the psycho bears, making this a really good way to make some money, especially since there are no rank requirements, but Fleo is still hesitant to accept. Fenris doesn't get why he is so scared since she is sure he could take out the bears in no time, but he still doesn't know just how strong he is, so hearing that the hero lost to these bears has him spooked. To prove to him that he is actually really powerful, Fenris decides that she will go out and fight the bears herself, and if she wins, then it will be proof that Fleo is superior to the hero since he is already confirmed to be stronger than her. They both teleport to the last location where the Psycho Bears were spotted, and they find a house nearby which the guild told them they can use as a base while they hunt. Fenris is glad Fleo decided to come with her, but she lets him know that she can handle a couple of Psycho Bears by herself. Even if she is confident in her abilities, Fleo can't bring himself to just let her do it on her own, and besides, there was a spell he wanted to test out, so he might as well do it here. Just then, they hear screams coming from over the cliff, so they rush over to see if someone is in trouble. They find a group of Psycho Bears attacking that adventuring party that Fleo teleported away while he fought Fenris. Fenris still doesn't like them, so she suggests they just pretend like they didn't see anything and come back for the bears later. But the girls are about to be killed, so Fleo jumps in and uses his lightning magic to take out a bunch of the bears, and since Fleo got himself involved, Fenris jumps down to take out the last bear by stomping it into the ground. However, she still complains that Fleo is being too nice. As Fleo jumps down as well, the knights recognize him and give their thanks for him once again coming to their rescue. Fleo introduces Riz to them as his travel companion, which upsets Riz because he didn't introduce her as his wife. A moment later, a giant Psycho Bear sneaks up behind Riz and tries to attack her. But since she's in a bad mood right now, she simply stares at it, and the bear realizes that it does not want to fight anymore. It falls backwards and lays there, leaving everyone confused. But they soon come to learn that the bear just gave up and surrendered to them. It's good that the bear is smart enough to know that it is outmatched, but they can't exactly just let it go either because it'll just attack someone else eventually. Thus, they come up with the idea to keep this Psycho Bear as a pet so it doesn't attack people anymore. Fleo takes a look at the system and finds something called restriction magic that will keep it from going wild, but even though the bear is tame now, it will still cause a panic if they just walk around with it like this, so he uses shape-shifting magic to make it look like a bunny. The knights can't believe they just witnessed someone tame a bear and then transform it into a bunny, but absurdity aside, Fleo and Riz are definitely powerful, so Belorosa has a request to ask of them. She wishes for Fleo to train them to be able to defeat monsters on the level of Psycho Bears. After the hero came back from his defeat, he blamed the knights for being too incompetent and threw a tantrum, locking himself in his room until they become strong enough to fight so he doesn't have to. Now, it's a completely unreasonable demand, but the king had no choice but to accept, so he ordered the knights to go train themselves. So far, it has been going about as bad as you would expect considering they nearly got killed back there, so they would appreciate it if he trained them. Fleo doesn't know how to respond since he doesn't really understand how his magic works in the first place. He really doesn't want to have to go through the effort of training them, so he tries to use Riz's bad mood as a reason to back out. He tells the knights that she's actually his wife, and he really just wants to spend time with her, so he can't help. But once Riz hears him call her his wife, she becomes so happy that she agrees to have Fleo train the knights. Since there's no backing out, Fleo warns them that he isn't confident in his teaching skills, but he'll try his best to help them regardless. Meanwhile, over in the Demon Kingdom, the Dark One receives a report that there is an individual who possesses magic strong enough to instantly purify the entire Delavisive forest, so the Dark One orders that he be captured at any cost. The next morning, Fleo wakes up to find Riz just staring at him while he sleeps, and when asked why she is doing so, she answered that they are a married couple now, so it is perfectly normal for her to stare at him while he sleeps. We get a flashback to the previous night when Riz was fully prepared to be taken to Pound Town as Fleo's wife, but Fleo still hasn't come to accept this whole arrangement as reality, so he refuses to spend the night with her. Riz is a little hurt by his rejection, but Fleo assures her that it's not that he doesn't like her, but there are a lot of steps to be taken before baby making is on the table, so for now he plans to just sleep out in the hallway so that Riz can have the room to herself. But she counters by saying Belorosa and the others would start to suspect something was off about their marriage if Fleo refused to sleep in the same room as Riz. Therefore, Fleo concedes and now has to stay with her while they are here, but even if mating is off the table, Riz wants to do wide things for Fleo, so she offers to help him get dressed for the day. Fleo doesn't need her help, but since it's a harmless gesture, he doesn't resist as she takes off his shirt. But at that moment, Balarosa enters the room, and considering the situation, she feels like she is seeing something she shouldn't, immediately leaves. Later that day, they begin the training they agreed to do, but as Balarosa is faced with a giant boar, she runs away as soon as it charges at her. The warrior tries to take over as the damage dealer, but she takes one swing, and she's immediately out of moves because that's all she knows how to do. Before she can get gored, Riz tells Balanov to stop being useless and use her magic to help, so she deploys a defensive spell which is able to block the boar's strike. Fleo then tells Bylary to shoot at the boar, but when she does, this is all the damage the arrow manages to do. It is safe to say that this team is absolutely dog water when it comes to a fight, so Fleo's got a lot of work ahead of him if he plans to train them until they're decent. Since they are going to be here for a while, Fleo offers the girls a room in the house since he now owns it as part of his reward from the Psycho Bear quest. He couldn't exactly let them sleep on the floor forever after all, and they are truly grateful for his consideration. Just then, Riz comes in and tells everyone that she is done preparing lunch so they should come and eat. However, Riz has never been in a kitchen before, so the concept of cooking food is lost on her. Fleo doesn't want to get food poisoning, so he suggests that they cook the meat, but he won't let Riz do it because she's guaranteed to burn it to ash if she tried. Balarosa offers to help him prepare the food as well, so after some time, a full meal is finally ready. Everyone thinks it looks great, so they compliment Fleo on his amazing cooking skills, but he can't take all the credit for this since Balarosa is a surprisingly good cook as well. Riz is getting jealous of all the praise Bali is receiving since she is meant to be the wife here. Bali is embarrassed by all the praise and explains that she is actually better at cooking than she is with a sword, which everyone already knew. She came from a fallen noble family and times were tough, so they couldn't afford to hire a chef, so Bali had to learn to cook her own food. Everyone digs in, and the food is as delicious as it looked, but Riz is still having trouble trusting it since she is strictly anti-vegetarian. However, since Fleo was the one who made that salad, she gives it a try, and it's not that bad. Later that day, Fleo takes all the excess boars they killed while hunting into the guild to be assessed, and he is starting to get some attention for how easy he makes it look to take those giant things down. They are waiting to have their boars assessed by the guild, so Riz asks Fleo if it would be alright if she headed into town for a bit. He doesn't have a problem with it since she says she has some business to attend to, and gets approached by a guild employee named Lilith, who wants to discuss some things anyway, so he says they should meet back here once she's done. After Fleo leaves, Riz is determined to begin her training arc of everything gourmet. Meanwhile, Fleo speaks with Lilith, who tells him that he has become quite famous in town for his incredible accomplishments, and tales of his strength have reached all the way to the palace, so an offer is being extended to him so he can work under the hero. He would be appointed as an honorary knight and help in finally defeating the demon lord, but having to deal with the palace again sounds terrible to Fleo. To the people of this world, helping defeat the demon lord would be the highest honor imaginable, but Fleo isn't from this world, so why should he give a damn? He bluntly tells Lilith that he has no interest in anything to do with the hero, nor does he plan to take part in the battle against the demon lord, so after saying everything he wishes to say, he simply leaves. As he steps outside, he finds Riz waiting for him, but she looks like she got caught in a fire, so he is really worried for her well-being. In the time she was gone, she tried to take a cooking class in order to win Fleo's love, but she underestimated how hard it is to follow a recipe and things didn't turn out so well. However, she is still determined to keep trying until she can make a meal that doesn't qualify as charcoal. And over in the castle, Blondie is intent on getting these amazing adventurers in the guild he has heard so much about to join him, so he can get them to do all the hero work for him instead. As a result, for the next month, Fleo and Riz have been receiving unsolicited requests to work under the hero, but they are rejected immediately every time. It has gotten so annoying that Riz is considering taking a more violent approach to the rejections so they don't come back, but Fleo knows the messenger is just doing his job, so he shouldn't have to suffer the consequences. More importantly, they have to return to training Bali and the others. As he heads to the backyard, he finds Blossom tending to the garden, and it is really flourishing under her care because she wants to do something as thanks for all the help he has given them. Which is nice and all, but she has been using this as an excuse not to train her sword skills for a while now. Out in the forest, Riz is trying to get Bylary to try firing arrows at a living target like an archer is meant to. But Bylary is too chicken to fire any arrows at the actual chickens because she thinks they are so cute, so Riz tries to persuade her with a counter-argument. They could eat fried chicken if she shoots it. Bylary still refuses to do it, so her training has hit a dead end. Meanwhile, Bolano is on the brink of passing out due to mana exhaustion. So Fleo came up with the idea to make a ring that can increase her magic capacity so she won't pass out after using her magic once. She is grateful for it, but she lets the intrusive thoughts and feelings she has for Fleo take over for a second and tries putting it on her ring finger. But Reese puts a stop to that real quick because she won't stand for any competition as Fleo's wife. Just then, Ballyrosa calls out for Fleo in a panic because she is losing to a caterpillar, but Reese stops this as well since she won't let Bally get any more attention from Fleo. After they are done with training, everyone heads inside to eat, and even though the food was made by Riz, it actually looks edible now. Fleo asks when she managed to learn how to cook so well, so Riz admits that she took many cooking classes and set a lot of buildings on fire, but it was ultimately worth it for her to be able to cook for Fleo. Meanwhile, out in the woods behind the house, a demon girl is spying on them, and she is certain that Reese is definitely the same feared and powerful demon that she knew, but she's fawning over a human so something doesn't add up for her. Fortunately, she'll have the chance to ask about it directly since Reese has found out Euliminez was spying on her. Euliminez is brought inside where Fleo pours her a cup of tea, but Reese isn't interested in entertaining their unannounced guest. So she immediately asks what Euliminez is doing here since she certainly didn't come here to play as a confederate of the Dark One. She explains that she was sent to investigate this area, but then she saw Reese here, so she wanted to figure out what she was doing. Reese in turn explains that she is living there with her husband now, and Euliminez is shocked to hear that Reese has already gotten married, but she doesn't intend to do anything to ruin it for her though. Euliminez takes another sip of tea. She can't believe Reese actually changed so much in the time she's been gone. And another thing she finds strange is Fleo. He seems way too calm considering he's sitting with a demon confederate of the Dark One, and Euliminez is unable to analyze his stats with her skill at all. Even the Dark One can't hide his stats from her, so Fleo must be a force to be reckoned with. She changes the subject and talks about how things around here have been changing for a while now, like how the Delavisa forest suddenly became devoid of all magical beasts overnight. Hearing this, Fleo finally recalls the purification spell he used in the beginning, and since all of his other spells seem to be crazy powerful, his purification must have succeeded in purifying the entire forest. Euliminez takes a moment to process what he just said, because if he really did purify the forest, then that means he is the one who killed Fengril and his entire army. In other words, he killed Fenrir's brother, and Euliminez can't believe Fenris would choose to marry him even when she knows he is the reason her brother died. Reese tells Euliminez to shut up for a second since all the accusations on Fleo are getting annoying, but when Fleo asks if she was aware that he killed him, Reese confirms as much. There aren't that many people in the kingdom who are capable of using purification magic on such a large scale, so it was kind of obvious that only Fleo could have done it, but in the end, Fengril was a proud warrior, so he wouldn't want his death to be pitied, even if it was caused by a ridiculous powerhouse like Fleo. And besides, if he didn't want to die, then he shouldn't have let himself get killed. Reese fell in love with him for his strength, so regardless of who he has killed, her feelings about him won't change one bit. Just then, they realize that their entire conversation was overheard by the knights, so they now know that Reese is the same demon Fenris that nearly killed them in the beginning. So they are all even more scared of her, especially Bylary. Seeing that Fleo is a major threat to the Dark Army, Euliminez asks if she can have a match with him so she can see how strong the man Fenris Mary truly is. She believes she can take both of them down at once this way, but Reese isn't going to let it happen because she thinks Euliminez is trying to steal her man. Fleo eventually agrees to the match, and the rules are set so that magic is allowed and it will go on until someone surrenders. Euliminez thinks she has this in the bag as she leaps into the air and casts one spell to distract Fleo, while another one comes from below. However, Fleo dispels both in an instant and counters with his own spell, which ties Euliminez up in the air. She is unable to move or defend herself, so she surrenders. The next day, Fleo has a much-needed talk with the knights and apologizes for not telling them who Reese actually is because he thought it would cause trouble. He understands if they wish to report him to the castle, but Fenris tells them that she has completely devoted herself to Fleo, so she isn't a part of the Dark Army any longer. Bally agrees that they would normally have to report this to the castle, but given the fact that Reese isn't a threat anymore and has been helping them for the last month, they may just forget to mention this to the king. Reese is glad to hear this, but then her attention is drawn outside as Euliminez has returned and she's being a sore loser, so she brought a whole dragon army to defeat Fleo. However, instead of fear, Fleo is more so amazed because this is his first time seeing dragons in person. Euliminez orders the dragons to fire at him, so Fleo counters by striking them all down with his magic. In an instant, the strongest dragon army of the Dark One has been reduced to a pile of bodies, and the ones that managed to survive mope the hell out of there since they aren't getting paid enough for this. Blossom tells him he is amazing for being able to handle that many dragons at once, and if she knew it was going to be that easy, she would have thrown her hoe at one of the dragons so she could get the Dragon Slayer title, but Fleo doesn't see a reason why she can't still try. He tells her to throw her hoe at one of the dragons, and as she does so, he buffs the attack, making it powerful enough to pierce through a dragon's neck. She manages to get the title, so the others all rush to Fleo to ask for his help as well, but all the dragons have already left, so they are out of luck. Meanwhile, Lord Gull of the Dark Army has been watching everything and is shocked that Fleo possesses so much power despite not being the hero, so he decides to go and challenge him personally to end this. After their last unwanted guest, Fleo decides to put up a barrier around his house so he will be able to tell as soon as anyone steps foot on their land. Riz is glad that they now have a security system, so if Eulimina's attempts to come back here again, she'll send her packing immediately. Even just thinking about her makes Riz really mad, but Fleo tells her to calm down since it's not that big of an issue. Riz doesn't get why Fleo is being so kind to Eulimina's when she was the one who attacked him first, but it's not so much that Fleo is trying to be nice to her. It's more so because he feels guilty for accidentally killing all those demons in the Delaveza forest without knowing. However, he keeps his guilt to himself and tells Riz it's nothing, so they both get ready to head back home. Meanwhile, back at the house, the girls are all still staring at Blossom's status screen, and Blossom is humbly bragging that she has the Dragon Slayer title. While they are all still admiring it, Valorosa leaves the group and says she is heading off to hunt for the day. The others think it is noble that she is so dedicated to her training, but in reality, she left so she could cry her eyes out because she wanted the Dragon Slayer title too. The Dragon Slayer title is something so extraordinary that every adventurer works really hard in order to get it at some point, but Blossom just got it for free. However, while she was still sulking, she is approached by a man from behind, and he asks for directions because he is here to meet an old friend of his. Valorosa finds it strange that someone would be out in a forest full of magical beasts with such little gear, so she remains cautious and asks who he is here to meet while gripping her blade. The man answers that he is here to see Riz, but if that's the case, then Valorosa deduces that he must be a part of the Dark Army and draws her sword on him. She asks what business he has with Riz, so the man explains that he doesn't want any trouble, and just came here to catch up with her. But if he's not welcome, then he'll take his leave for now. But he asks Valorosa to deliver a message for him and asks Riz if she would be willing to have a chat with him over some tea. Valorosa accepts his request, but before he leaves, she asks what his name is, so the man responds, saying he is called Gozel. A little while after he left, Fleo and Riz come running up to Valorosa and ask if she is alright. Valorosa says she is fine, but a member of the Dark Army was just here looking for Riz. He said his name was Gozel, so Riz immediately knew who it was, but she thinks he could have chosen a better fake name than Gozel. Fleo and Riz came here as fast as they could because the barrier picked up something odd, but what they saw when they got here shocked them. Valorosa was threatening someone whose status said he was the Dark One. So in other words, Gozel could have folded her with a sneeze if he wanted to, but he chose to be civil. His real name is Gull, and now that Valorosa realizes what she did, she's terrified that he may come back for revenge against her later. The next day, Gozel shows up at their front door and Riz is surprised he actually showed up after all. Fleo greets him and invites him to join them for tea inside, but Gozel finds it strange that Fleo is so calm in the presence of the Dark One. As they walk down the hall, Valorosa comes out to go hang some laundry, but then she sees Gozel and he feels like getting some payback for earlier, so he drags her into the meeting with Fleo and Riz, and she's sitting right next to him, so she's scared out of her mind. Riz asks Gozel if he is here for revenge, but he has another purpose for coming here. He wants to recruit Fleo to join the Dark Army. Fleo is a little confused by his request, but Gozel is dead serious, so Fleo gives his honest answer and declines the offer. Gozel is disappointed that Fleo refused his offer, but he asks why he isn't fighting on the side of the humans if he doesn't want to join the Dark Army. Fleo sees no reason to side with humanity just because he is human, plus he has got some personal beef with the king for summoning him here and try and get rid of him. On top of that, he doesn't even know the reason for this whole war since he's not from this world and no one ever explained it to him. Gozel takes it upon himself to explain the war to him. Although it has been going on for so long that there are few people who still remember the actual reason the war started in the first place, but as far as Gozel knows, it started when the first Dark One arrived in this world after being transported here. He was rejected by the humans, so he rose to power among the demons who accepted him as their ruler since they were being oppressed by the humans at the time. That's how the war started, but the longer it dragged on, the more ill will accumulated and stopping it will become almost impossible without one side being eradicated. Fleo asks Gozel if he wishes to stop the war, and Gozel confirms as much, stating that he has no intention of taking over the world like the first Dark One, but he is the king of the demons, and he can't just let his people be put under threat of destruction at the hands of the humans. He unleashes his demonic pressure and asks Fleo once more to join him. But Fleo remains unfazed and reiterates that he has no intention of siding with the humans or demons in this war. Seeing that Fleo is going to be changing his mind on the matter anytime soon, Gozel accepts his decision and gets up to leave, but he makes it clear that this doesn't mean he has given up on winning Fleo over to his side. As he leaves, Gozel thinks to himself that he never would have imagined that he would find someone who could withstand his presence so easily, and she didn't even throw up on herself, so Gozel now has an interest in Balarosa. As he leaves, the other girls come over to check if Balarosa is still sane after what she just went through, and she is definitely going to need some therapy to process this. Balarosa settles for the next best thing and just stays in bed the whole day, so the next morning when she wakes up, she walks downstairs and greets everyone, only to find Gozel in the kitchen having breakfast with Fleo and Riz. Riz still doesn't like him being here, so she wants him to just eat his food and leave, but Fleo thinks she's being too rude to him. Gozel spots Balarosa and says she should come eat with him, but she doesn't want a repeat of yesterday, so she makes up an excuse about needing to get herself dressed first and runs away. But that just makes Gozel more interested in her. Later, she tries to sneak out of the house so she doesn't run into him again, but he was already onto her, so he was waiting outside the door. He tells her he would like to have a chat with her, but she is still really scared of him, so she uses her sword training as an excuse to run away again. The next day, Gozel approaches her again, but she still finds more excuses to avoid him, although that won't stop him from pursuing her. While all this was going on, some spies of the king had been watching Fleo's house and reported that a demon has frequently been visiting him for unknown reasons. The king is enraged that Fleo would ignore his summons, but would then go and join the demons, so he is ready to send soldiers after him. However, the first princess, who is apparently the only voice of reason in the castle, tells the king that it is a bad idea to send soldiers after Fleo now, since they don't know for sure if he actually sided with the demon army or not. And it's just a bad idea in general to antagonize a person who is so powerful. The king refuses to listen to logic and common sense, and things don't get any better because the blonde hero arrives in the throne room, single-handedly dropping the average IQ of the room by 20 points. He has come here with the brilliant idea to force Fleo into fighting in the war, so he asks to be given some soldiers to go and threaten him, because that's totally going to work out in his favor. Over in the Demon Kingdom, Gozel is about to head out to Fleo's house once more, but Euliminus doesn't think it's such a good idea since Fleo is really dangerous. But Gozel doesn't see it that way since Fleo is actually a really understanding person. A lot better than the king who just ignores reason in favor of violence. If he has any chance to win Fleo over, then it would be in his best interest to take it. However, he hasn't forgotten about the ongoing war and is making plans to have his troops move out soon. Meanwhile, back at Fleo's house, he has been working on a prototype of some new equipment made of dragon scales so he can sell them in town. It will take a while before he can make it good enough to be sold, but once he's done, they'll be able to make a decent income off it. Riz asks Fleo if he's sure he made the right decision in rejecting the king's offer to fight, because at least that way he would receive far better rewards than anything he gets now, and he wouldn't need to worry about money. It wouldn't have been hard for him with the abilities he possesses, so she asks if he chose not to fight the demon army because she is a demon. Fleo tells her that it's not because of that, but rather because he knows he possesses incredible power, so he could probably destroy the human or demon kingdom if he wanted. With that much power, he doesn't want to fight anyone as long as he doesn't have to. Just then, they hear a knock at the door, and Riz is sure it must be Gozel again, but Fleo's barrier didn't detect any demons in the vicinity, so it can't be him. As Fleo goes to answer the door, he is greeted with the unpleasant sight of the blonde hero's face and an army of soldiers. He tells Fleo that he has two choices here. Either he can choose to become his subordinate and help defeat the Dark One, or the blonde hero will declare him a Dark Army informant and cut him down immediately. The hero really thinks he accomplished something with his statement, so he is basking in the glory of his own ego. However, Fleo just tells him, "No, I don't think I'll do that." He makes it clear that he doesn't want to fight in the war at all, so he won't be siding with either the kingdom or the Dark Army, but that just makes the hero threaten him as a traitor. The girls speak up and say it's unfair to decide that on his own since Fleo is most certainly not a traitor, but that's exactly what traitors would say, so he threatens to arrest all of them for treason as well. Since he went and involved everyone else in this, Fleo decides that if he can't stay here without fighting, he'll just go somewhere else. If Fleo is leaving, then everyone else says they will go with him as well. Since everyone is in agreement, Fleo casts his teleportation magic to move everyone, as well as the house and land. The hero is stunned by Fleo's ability to use teleportation magic, so he is starting to realize that he may be the inferior one here. Just then, the soldiers spot the man they believe to be a demon, so the hero tries to salvage the situation and orders his men to capture the demon. Gozel is confused why there's a huge hole where Fleo's house used to be, but when he is surrounded by soldiers from the kingdom, he realizes that they must have forced Fleo to leave the area, and he is really angry about it. So much so that he vows to teach them a lesson and calls for his troops to immediately begin their assault on the Clyrode kingdom. Back at the demon castle, Euliminus, as well as all the other demons, heard the declaration of war, so they all awaken to fight. Seeing this, the hero does the only thing he knows how to do and runs away while leaving his soldiers to die. Meanwhile, Fleo has successfully relocated his house to a plot of land near a village called Hauto. Fleo came here a while ago to sell some dragon scales in town, and since it's really far from the capital, there's no way that either the hero or the Dark One will be able to find them, which especially relieves Balarosa because she didn't want the Dark One to end up proposing to her. Fleo apologizes to Reese for having to move so suddenly, but she doesn't mind where they go as long as she gets to stay by his side, and to celebrate their relocation, she decides to cook a wonderful feast for Fleo and the others, which they are all excited for. After Gozel had the order to begin invading the kingdom, several attacks have been carried out as they made their way through the kingdom's outposts. A situation has gotten so dire that the king receives reports saying that the northern barrier may not be able to hold them back much longer. It's at times like this that the kingdom would need their hero to stand up and fight for them, but unfortunately, the wimp went and locked himself in a fortress on the other side of the country so that he wouldn't have to fight. The king expected as much from that coward, but he's the best they got, so he orders for him to be summoned here immediately. In the meantime, he orders for the mages to be assembled in the capital so they can cast a purification to handle the demons, but that plan isn't without its own risks, since if the northern stronghold were to fall while they were casting the spell, they would be completely defenseless. Meanwhile, outside the kingdom's barrier, the Dark One is overseeing the invasion efforts when he receives a report from his subordinate Greenel, who tells him that the preparations he asked for have been made. Hearing this, Gozel tells Euliminus that it's time to withdraw from the battlefield, but she is confused about why he wants to retreat when they are the ones with the advantage here. Gozel explains that the king is likely planning to use large-scale purification magic soon, and he doesn't want any of his demons getting eradicated by it. So as the king and his mages all gather together to cast the purification spell, they indeed manage to activate it, but it helps them kill a total of 0 demons since everyone already left. On to more interesting topics, Fleo is still on the other side of the country from the war and has just returned home to Reyes, who is really happy to see him, almost a little too enthusiastic, so Fleo is feeling slightly concerned. Everyone gathers for dinner, and Reyes asks Fleo how business went today and if he managed to find any buyers for his wares, but he hasn't really gotten to advertise any of his products yet since he is still just scoping out the competition. He needs to know what the average quality and prices are for this area before he does anything, and Blossom seems to have been considering selling her vegetables in town as well to at least pay Fleo back for letting them live here for free. Fleo assures them that he doesn't require payment for their accommodation. Meanwhile, over in the castle, the priest tells the princess that the purification spell they cast will have an effect for the next 3 months, so during that time, the demons won't be able to continue with their attacks. However, if things go on like this, the kingdom won't be able to hold out. Many of the mages have been sent into comas from having their mana depleted after casting the purification spell, and they'll need at least 2 or 3 months to recover. And while the king is respectable for doing his part to activate the spell, it also left him in a state of incapacitation, so he won't be able to do any more until he recovers. As such, until he wakes up, the princess will assume the duties of ruler, and the first thing she's going to do with her new authority is fire the blonde hero from his position as hero. The kingdom was on the brink of destruction a few moments ago, and yet the hero didn't bother to lend his aid, nor did he even leave the stronghold he is hiding in. The retainers are all hesitant to agree since they can't go to war without a hero, but it's not like the current one was being of any help, so they ask if she wants them to begin preparations for another hero summoning. Unfortunately, with most of their mages down for the count, they aren't going to be able to complete another summoning spell, so they'll need to consult the oracle for help. A while later, the former blonde hero has just received the news that his hero status has been revoked, so he is now just the blonde loser. He tries to argue his way back into the stronghold by saying he was appointed by the king to be the hero, but the guard is sick of his shit, so he just dumps his stuff in front of him and walks away. That night, while Fleo and Reyes are in bed, he asks if she's still asleep, and when she responds, he tells her that he's thankful for everything she has done for him. He knows it must be hard enough for her to live with humans to begin with, but she also pushes herself to do the housework and act as his wife, so he is really grateful for it since there's no way he would have had such a peaceful life if he were alone. Coincidentally, the next morning, all the girls decide to do something special for Fleo and Reese, so they tell them that they'll handle all the housework for today, so Fleo is free to go out on a date with Riz. Riz is certainly excited by the idea, but Fleo is hesitant because he has never been on a date before. However, he's already married to Reese, and there's no backing out now, so he gets dragged off for a day of fun in town. He and Reese go out and do a lot of fun date things, later arriving at a market where there are a bunch of rare items on display. Fleo wants to thank Riz for all the help she has given him, so he tells her that she can pick out anything she wants and he'll get it as a gift for her. She is really happy that Fleo wants to give her a gift, so they spend some more time walking around and looking for something Riz likes until eventually they come across this stall selling jewelry, which would make a perfect gift for Riz. So Fleo picks out a blue brooch that matches Riz's general colors, and she absolutely loves it. So much so that she spends the entire night just staring at the wonderful gift she received. The other girls find her behavior a little odd, but she did say something about the brooch being a precious gift from Fleo, so they can understand why she's so happy. But they are also very jealous as well. Later that same night, Fleo was in bed trying to sleep, but he felt two soft things pressing up against his body, so he opened his eyes and found Riz hugging him tightly. He gets embarrassed that he's now sharing a bed with Riz, so he asks her what exactly it is that she's trying to pull. But then he realizes that she's already out cold from exhaustion, and they did have a pretty packed day together. Meanwhile, the blonde loser has somehow managed to break into the castle treasury unnoticed, and is currently digging through the stockpile as a last-ditch effort. His side piece is still sticking beside him mostly because she wants to see what happens and if the blonde loser can somehow regain his status. And rather than just accept that he's no longer the hero and do something like steal a chest full of valuables to live the rich life, he is instead searching through the items in hopes of finding something that can kill the Dark One, as if the kingdom wouldn't have used it already if it was here. As he continues searching, he thinks back to the amazing magic he saw Fleo use to get away from him, and he is still frustrated by the idea that a commoner can use magic far greater than anything he can pull off. If only he were blessed by the plot armor gods, then maybe he could actually be capable of holding the title of hero. His rant of self-pity seems to have drawn the attention of some unknown entity, and this entity speaks directly to the blonde loser, telling him that he can grant him the immense power he wishes for, and all he needs to do is come into this spooky and clearly dangerous hidden. Inside, he finds a sword and a stone which the voice tells him to pick up, and if he does, he will receive the power he wants so desperately. There are a lot of red flags being raised, but the promise of power is too great for him to pass up, so the blonde loser pulls the sword from the stone, and immediately after, he is blown back. Once things settle down, a woman named Haya is standing before him, and she proclaims herself to be a djinn who commands light and darkness before asking if the blondie is the one who freed her from her prison. He is scared at first, but once he understands the situation, he stands up and confirms that he is the one who set her free. Haya is thankful for his service, so she promises to grant him any 3 wishes he desires, and with the promise of anything he wants, Blondie knows exactly what he wants to do. Meanwhile, back in the castle, the princess has summoned the Oracle Ashura to assist her in saving the kingdom, and since they don't do this often, Ashura knows shit must have hit the fan really bad. The only thing protecting the kingdom right now is the effects of that purification spell, so they need to figure out what to do before it wears off. The princess wants Ashura to try and look into the future to see the best course of action, but before Ashura can look into the future, black collars appear around the heads of everyone in the room. No one understands what's going on since they can't take the collars off, but the princess knows exactly what this means, so she orders the guards to go down to the treasury because someone is down there messing with powers they don't comprehend. In the meantime, Ashura explains that the collars around everyone's necks are called the collars of sacrifice, and it is used by a particular djinn when she's granting a wish. The purpose of the collar is to take the heads off the victims once the wish is granted, but the people have no idea why anyone would use something so dangerous. The princess tells them that long ago, a former king of Clyrode had used the djinn to make a wish to defeat the Dark One of the time, but while his wish was granted, it is said that half of all living things on the continent were sacrificed as a result. Through the efforts of many of the greatest mages in the country, the djinn was successfully sealed away so that a catastrophe like that would never happen again. The seal isn't one that is easy to break, but it seems like whoever managed to free the djinn has already made a wish, and that means everyone here is doomed. The princess says they have time to live until the djinn grants this person's wish, so she asks Ashura to find out the best way to avoid dying here. Ashura understands and begins looking for a solution to their predicament, and a few moments later, she has found the answers to all their problems. To prevent the sacrifice from taking place, they need to find the true hero who has already been summoned. The retainers immediately guess that the true hero must be the guy they failed to recruit to their side, so they are ready to go contact Fleo, who is located in the west according to Ashura. The Goat Man wants to send every single soldier available to look for Fleo, but the princess knows they can't afford to divide the units that have been tasked with defending the kingdom, so instead, she says she will personally look for Fleo. Meanwhile, Fleo is in a weapon shop and has just shown his completed dragon scale shield to the owner, who is really impressed. He can tell that the weapon is made of genuine dragon scales, but it is rather rare, so Fleo makes an excuse about having a top-secret supplier he acquires this stuff from. The shop owner agrees to buy this shield for any price that Fleo wants to sell it for, but under the condition that Fleo sell any other weapons he has in stock to his shop. Fleo is more than happy to agree to that, but he also has a request for the shop owner to direct him to the most trustworthy wholesaler he knows. The shop owner agrees to direct him to the best wholesaler he knows, and all the while, Riz and Balarosa are watching Fleo work and are really impressed by his negotiation skills. Balarosa, for one, is really jealous of Riz for having Fleo as her husband, but Riz gets jealous and was about to decapitate her on the spot for thinking about stealing Fleo from her. Balarosa tries to de-escalate the situation by explaining that she just meant she would love to have a man like Fleo. But if that's the case, Riz reminds Balarosa that Gozel is infatuated with her, so he's always an option, but Balarosa has mixed feelings about her admirer being the Dark One. Fleo exits the shop soon after and walks over to Balarosa to thank her for introducing him to this place. They start leaving and Riz expresses how wonderful she thinks it is that Fleo's business is going well, but she's a little sad that he will have less time to spend with her overall. So she asks that he try to make time for them to hang out together. Fleo is happy to make time for Riz, however, a moment later, he receives a warning from the system telling him that a djinn is approaching. He turns around and finds Haya floating there, and after confirming that the man before her is indeed Fleo, she prepares to fulfill the wish of Blondie. And that is to murder Fleo because he didn't have enough brain cells to think of something better. Riz realizes what's about to happen, so even though Fleo's system deploys an automatic defense shield, she runs out in front of him and ends up getting slashed in the process. Fleo is in shock from what he just witnessed, but all the djinn can think about is how she happened to miss her intended target, so this time she decides to fire spells all around in order to make sure Fleo dies, but his automatic defense magic is able to block it all. While he and Balarosa are panicking over Riz's fatal injury, he tries to use his healing magic to help her recover, but the system informs him that the wounds she has sustained are too grave to be healed. At the same time, the djinn casts her most powerful Origin of Light spell to take down Fleo, but once it is complete, not only is he unharmed, the system also manages to acquire the Origin of Light and Darkness magic. Fleo lets down Riz's corpse to stand up and fueled by rage. The only thing he says is that he will make sure Haya pays for what she has done. This was the end of episode 5. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to not miss the next part.